talk about ADHD. Do you ever feel burnt out? Do you feel really tired, like you just can't get things done anymore when maybe you didn't always feel that way? What about like it just taking longer than it used to, or you just feel like you just want to lie in bed quite a lot and that you just can't get up? So, that could be some signs of ADHD burnout, which is something that perhaps people might not recognize when they're actually going through it. So, hi, I'm Brenda Taylor, and I'm a clinical psychologist and an ADHD educator. And I'm going to talk a little bit today about what it feels like, the signs and symptoms, and then perhaps a couple of things you can do to get started on your way out of burnout. Okay, so what is ADHD burnout? So, burnout is a state of chronic emotional and physical exhaustion. And unfortunately, it's very common for late diagnosed ADHDers and neurodivergent people. And that can be for a number of reasons. It can be because holding it together, all your life, masking, meeting all your responsibilities, managing families, managing work, other responsibilities, and then all of a sudden it can just feel too much, too overwhelming, and that's when you have a crash. And that crash just can feel so awful, where you just feel like you can't do anything, get out of bed, or you're just like in slow motion, kind of moving through mud, where things feel a lot harder perhaps than they used to. Another reason can feel like it just takes more mental effort just to keep up, and that can lead to overwhelm and feelings of exhaustion and fatigue. So why is that more common in people with ADHD? Well, there really are a number of reasons. One of them can be about executive dysfunction, emotional dysregulation, the ideas behind perfectionism and the drive to always be perfect or things not feeling good enough unless you perceive them as perfect. It can be, for women as well, about hormonal fluctuations as well. Some of it can be about dopamine chasing and not feeling good unless you're having that dopamine high or activities that make you feel like that. Or it can be, as well, undiagnosed ADHD or late diagnosed. As I was saying before, keeping it all together to the point and then just crashing because it's just been so much effort mentally and physically to do that. With executive dysfunction, it can be partly about losing track of time, double booking yourself, always feel like you're running behind, and obviously that buys into time blindness as well. So always rushing, feeling like you're in the wrong place, and all of that is really mentally taxing. Emotional dysregulation, as I mentioned before, is definitely part of this picture too. With ADHD, big emotions can feel really big. And so what goes along with that can be, they're really exhausting too. So being on a bit of an emotional roller coaster can actually take its toll and impact on you, especially over time, if you're not finding ways to then regulate, going from one thing to the other as well. So that is part of the emotional dysregulation. So another impact, obviously for women in particular, is estrogen and how that impacts ADHD symptoms. So it creates energy fluctuations, and especially with menstrual cycles having fluctuations in your progesterone, for example, and all the other hormones that go along with it, can make it very hard thinking about perimenopause and menopause as well. All of these things add together to make, keeping it together and feeling and regulating, just give it that extra layer of difficulty and requires more energy. So that can also contribute to burnout as well. And so we often find that at different points, perhaps in a woman's life, there are more times you are at risk of becoming burnt out as well. So it's good to also look at those major milestones, perhaps as an indicator for some people. So ADHD brains seeks stimulation. So that can also then buy into dopamine chasing. And when we're chasing dopamine, it can mean like being hyper-focused on a hobby or doing something, but then ignoring other things that you need to do to take care of your body. So thinking about not getting enough sleep, doom scrolling at 2 a.m., things like that are all going to contribute to feeling more tired, more fatigued, and over time, that can also be a factor in burning out too. Okay, so what are the signs of burnout? Signs of burnout are things like feeling overwhelmed and noticing those thoughts that telling you that's how you're feeling all the time. It might be wanting to run away from things, like running away from your responsibilities. For example, not wanting to go to work, or just feeling like wishing you could always have a holiday or a rest. Constant negativity or cynicism. So if you start to see the world as, always bad, or, having a lot of doubts about things, or noticing that your thoughts are a lot more negative perhaps than they used to be, that can also be a sign. It can be about feeling detached and lonely as well, and not connected to people, or not feeling like you want to do that either when perhaps, before you did. So I guess it's also noticing changes in yourself and your behaviour. It can be anxiety or emotional numbness, not feeling pleasure or enjoyment in things. And it can also be having trouble switching off and not feeling like you can just relax your mind and your body and wind down. So physical signs of ADHD might be things like a lot of fatigue and feeling low in energy, insomnia, so having trouble falling asleep or staying asleep as well, like waking up early, for example, at 3 a.m. and not being able to go back to sleep. It could be a lot of headaches and migraines. It might also look like gut issues or getting sick quite often, or more often than you did before. Could be a lot of jaw clenching or body pains, aches, things like that perhaps weren't there before, and having a lot of muscle tension, headaches, shoulder, neck pain, and those other types of aches and pains. Okay, so I've talked about all the signs, symptoms, all the problems. It all sounds like doom and gloom, but people can recover from burnout, and it's really important to notice it first and to take those steps, because that doesn't have to be your life at all. So one of the most important things is starting to look at what is it about your life that's contributing to that. Burnout doesn't happen in a vacuum. It's from a number of factors. So that obviously neurodivergence can be one of the factors, but it's not going to be the only factor, because not absolutely everybody has burnout all the time. So it's also going to be looking at your lifestyle. So looking at things like, are you overworking? Are you a perfectionist and chasing perfectionism all the time, always feeling like what you're doing isn't good enough? Do you define yourself entirely by what you achieve? Like, is your identity so wrapped up in your achievements or your work, or feeling like you need to run the perfect household that it's just not sustainable? And another things are you listening to your body signals, or are you ignoring them? All those things are going to be part of the reason why most people are burning out, but there's also probably a more complete list as well, but just some things to think about. Okay, so here are some of my ADHD friendly tips to manage burnout and feeling exhausted. So if you way to help with burnout might be to replace the shame that you feel about not getting everything done all the time with some compassion. So compassion to me is about caring for yourself and loving yourself perhaps the way you love other people in your life. It's looking at what is kind. It's having some generosity as well. And I find that most people, when they think about, their friends and family and other people around them, it's much easier for them to generate compassion and to think about, what advice they would tell somebody in their life, how to recover, or, what they should do. But when it comes to themselves, they have a real difficulty with that compassionate lens on themselves. They always feel like they should do the hardest thing, or not have a rest, or get everything done all at once, whereas they probably would be very unlikely to say that to anyone else, especially if they were recovering, from burnout. So try to think about turning compassion inwards towards yourself. And even if you don't completely feel it, try to think about what is a kind thing I would say to somebody else if they were feeling the way I was feeling. And that can sometimes be enough to try and kickstart that compassion. So another thing can be identifying energy vampires in your life. There are some people in our lives who really drain us, who always are taking, it could be time, energy, money, whatever it is. And sometimes those are the people that you really need to be very conscious about setting boundaries around or limiting your time around them. I'm not saying to cut people out of your life necessarily. Obviously, it's good to help people and sometimes people need us. But if it's unbalanced and someone's always needing something from you, and obviously, we're talking about, functional adults and things in our lives. We're not talking about our children, obviously, like they're dependent on us, so that's okay. But that's why you need to conserve your energy so that you do have the energy for people in your life who do really need it, like children or people who are really dependent on us. The people who are not, who are probably big bad adults, they will be able to handle themselves. And sometimes I guess you just have to see it as something you're not able to help them with. They have to have their own solutions and journey. So I guess when I'm talking about energy vampires, I'm just talking about the people who are always taking from you, always wanting something, and really not giving much to you in return. It's not reciprocal at all. So sometimes those are the people to just distance yourself from a little bit. Okay, and lastly, you need to celebrate the small wins. I probably said this before, but being able to recognize when you are doing well and reminding yourself that you're doing well with your self-talk is going to be really important, because that's really motivating. Motivating yourself with some positivity can be just as powerful as trying to motivate yourself by being negative. And I would obviously argue it's way more powerful that you're cultivating, that reward for yourself. It feels good. And if you've done well, why shouldn't you recognize it? That's always going to be much more helpful. Okay, so we're coming to the end. I think if I want to get one message across is that you can recover from burnout. If you found this helpful, please share this with someone who you think it might help. Please like and subscribe, comment. I'd love to hear what you think. I'd love to hear if you want me to talk about anything else. But please know that you can get better from this. Can be normal to some degree, but also don't put up with it. Please seek help. Talk to your doctor, talk to your psychiatrist, talk to your friends, talk to somebody who you think can help and support you. But yes, please seek professional help if you are feeling that way. Don't let it keep going on. Okay, so thank you, and I will see you next time.